Imagine waking up and realizing that your country just lost over 1 million square kilometers overnight. Cities you grew up in, rivers you crossed, farmlands you worked, all gone. Not to war, not to invasion, but to a pen stroke on paper. That's exactly what happened to Russia in 1918. But why would a once mighty empire surrender so much land to its enemy, Germany? Today, we uncover the shocking truth behind one of the greatest territorial concessions in modern history. A tale of revolution, desperation, and survival that changed the map of Europe forever. Stay with us until the end. And if history fascinates you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful untold stories from the past. In the early 20th century, the Russian Empire was one of the largest and most powerful empires in the world, stretching across 2 continents. But despite its size, Russia was a nation teetering on the edge. When World War I began in 1914, Russia joined the Allied powers to fight Germany and Austria-Hungary. However, the war quickly revealed how fragile the empire truly was. Poor infrastructure, outdated tactics, weak leadership, and a struggling economy left Russian soldiers ill-equipped and underfed. The war that was supposed to unite the nation ended up ripping it apart. By 1917, Russia had suffered more than 6 million casualties. Entire cities were starving, workers were striking, soldiers were deserting. The people had lost faith in Tsar Nicholas II, whose leadership was increasingly seen as disconnected and authoritarian. In March 1917, the Tsar was forced to abdicate. A provisional government took over, but it was weak and lacked legitimacy. Worse, it chose to keep Russia in the war, a decision that would prove disastrous. Amid the chaos, a new political force was rising, one that promised peace, bread, and land. Led by Vladimir Lenin, the Bolshevik Party capitalized on the public's exhaustion and anger. In November 1917, they launched a revolution and overthrew the provisional government in what became known as the October Revolution. For the first time in history, a Marxist-inspired socialist state had come to power. But the Bolsheviks weren't just fighting old political elites. They were surrounded by enemies, foreign and domestic. Civil war loomed. Famine was spreading. Factories were idle. Lenin knew that if the Bolsheviks wanted to survive, they had to make a difficult and immediate choice: get Russia out of the war at any cost. In December 1917, Bolshevik leaders began peace negotiations with the German Empire in the city of Brest-Litovsk, located in modern-day Belarus. The talks were intense. Germany, sensing Russia's desperation, demanded massive territorial concessions. Lenin and his team were horrified. Germany wanted control over Ukraine, Poland, Belarus, the Baltics, and more. These weren't just minor border towns. These regions were economic powerhouses, rich in resources, industry, and agriculture. Giving them up meant losing 30% of Russia's population, 50% of its industry, and 90% of its coal mines. But Germany held all the cards. Russia's army had disintegrated. The Bolsheviks had no means to continue fighting. While some in Lenin's government urged delay, hoping Germany would soon collapse, Lenin believed peace, any peace, was essential for the revolution to survive. He famously said, "We must accept this shameful peace to save the revolution." On March 3, 1918, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed. Russia officially withdrew from World War I. In return, it gave up massive amounts of land to Germany and its allies. It was one of the most humiliating treaties ever signed by a major power. The consequences of the treaty were staggering. Russia ceded Ukraine, a breadbasket and economic hub; Belarus, a strategic buffer between Russia and Europe; the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, key ports and trade routes; parts of Poland and Finland, deeply tied to Russian history and power. These weren't just geographic losses, they were political, cultural, and economic wounds. Russia lost access to the Black Sea in the south and the Baltic Sea in the north. Its national morale hit rock bottom. Yet for Lenin and the Bolsheviks, it was a calculated sacrifice. Their priority wasn't national borders, it was surviving, rebuilding, and reshaping the country into a communist state. While Germany gained vast territories on paper, the benefits were short-lived. Just 8 months later, in November 1918, Germany lost the war. The Western Front collapsed, revolution erupted in Germany itself, and the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 nullified much of what was won in Brest-Litovsk. The lands Germany took were either returned or became independent. Ukraine declared independence. The Baltic states eventually became free nations. Poland re-emerged. The map of Eastern Europe was rewritten again, and this time with Russia largely excluded from the process. For Germany, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk turned out to be a fleeting and ultimately meaningless gain. For Russia, however, the treaty had already served its purpose. It bought the Bolsheviks the time and space they needed to consolidate power, survive the Civil War, and rebuild. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk remains one of the most controversial and consequential agreements in modern history. It is a reminder of what desperation in wartime can lead to. Russia's decision to give up so much land was a huge about weakness. It was about political survival. Lenin gambled that giving up territory would allow the Bolsheviks to survive and eventually regain control. In the end, his bet paid off. By the early 1920s, the Soviet Union had reasserted itself as a major power. Many of the lands lost in 1918 were gradually retaken, not through diplomacy, but through military campaigns and political pressure. The USSR would go on to dominate much of Eastern Europe for the rest of the 20th century. But the scars of Brest-Litovsk never fully healed. To this day, it serves as a symbol of how fragile empires can be when internal collapse meets external pressure. It also shows the cost of revolutionary change. Russia had to sacrifice geography to secure ideology. History doesn't always unfold with glory. It sometimes unravels in silence, behind closed doors, in back rooms where leaders sign away pieces of the map to keep the dream alive. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk may have seemed like a surrender, but in Lenin's eyes, it was a strategic retreat. If you found this story compelling, imagine how many more untold moments lie buried in our past, moments that shaped nations, wars, and futures. Subscribe now to uncover more historical stories that explain the world we live in today. Because sometimes, understanding the past is the only way to prepare for the future.